Camellia, I know I didn't prepare you for this topic, but by chance, were you watching earlier when I played that clip of that woman who was robbed?
Yes.
What was your take on that? That they called that man a beta male because he did not step in to rescue her from being robbed. What was your reaction to that video?
So, and I know what your opinion of it is, and
Yeah, I
I
gave
do
my
have some.
opinion.
I do. I
Yes.
do have some disagreements with that. I think that there is so much attention being drawn to that man because I really do think that society wants men to step into that role. And I understand all of the arguments for the risks that men take in putting themselves out there like that. And, Daniel Penny, you gave the example of Daniel Penny. And I think that those are very legitimate concerns, and it is risky. But I guess my thought was, are the people like Daniel Penny the exception rather than the rule? Because how many times do we see, or how many times do men step in and go to the defense of not just women, but other people? And we don't hear about those people because that's not what makes the news. It's not what gets the attention. But I think that when somebody doesn't do that, that there is kind of a visceral reaction from people, because I think deep down everybody, kind of sees that in many ways as a man's role to be that protector.
The problem with that is, Camellia, is that what is the inverse of that? What is the obligation? What obligation do women have towards men?
Well, in terms of,
That look on your face tells it all, CJ, right there. What do you mean? Obligations only go one way in this society. Men are to throw their bodies on the fire and sign up to go to war, and we can shame them or remove their man card at any time. But there's no obligations placed back on us, right? There's what obligation do
well,
we,
and I
if men
like,
have an obligation, a moral obligation to protect some dumb bitch who would testify against us in court because and call us a racist if the man we were defending ourselves is a black man, and she's a solid 4 out of 10, that and we have an obligation to go protect some mid when we've got a family and kids at home to die for your idea of what's right in society, Camellia. What obligations do women have towards men of equal or greater value?
so I would not view a man stepping in as an obligation, and I also don't view this necessarily as
It's not a
a,
moral obligation. It's not a
well,
moral obligation.
and I'm not sure that we can view this strictly in terms of a gender issue, because how many, even like 10, 15 years ago, do you remember seeing all of the videos that they would put on TV where they would set up a camera and they would have somebody pretend like, they were being beaten or they needed help or whatever. And like people would just walk by, like nobody stopped, men, women, it didn't matter who it was. Like people just they don't stop to help anymore. And there's been lots of discussion about why that is. So I'm not sure this is strictly a gender issue. I think
What
this is a
what
people issue.
responsibilities or obligations do women have towards men in society? What do you owe men?
I think we owe men respect when they earn it.
Well, honey, we owe women respect when they earn it, right? No, that's just basic merit. But there
Yeah.
is an obligation based upon us because of what is between our legs that you have placed upon us, right? A moral responsibility, maybe not an obligation, but a moral responsibility that you have placed upon us, our entire gender. What are you trying to tell me, Camellia, that on one hand there is a set of rules, responsibilities, and perhaps even some obligations that men must have, and there is no reciprocation expected on the opposite way? It does feel a bit like have your cake and eat it too, CJ.
Sure. I do think that, I mean, women do have responsibilities in terms of there are things that, only women can do that men, can't do, right? When it comes to that protector role, I think that in many ways, just biologically, naturally falls to men because men are just in general stronger. I mean, like physically, they're much more capable in those areas, and also mentally in how they, how their brains work, how they react to things. Their reaction times a lot of times is quicker. But
Correct.
on the
But
flip side,
on the flip
on the
side,
flip side,
what do you Oh, it's time to
what
pay up, ladies. It's time to pay up. What have you got for us? What do
I
you
do
bring to the
think
table? What do you bring to the table? I'm tired of hearing, well, I am the table. What do you bring to the table, ladies? Let's start.
the
Show your cards.
perpetuation of the human species.
Oh, bullshit. Boo, boo. Where's my boo button?
Like,
We can have a kid. We can have a kid with
yeah,
any old hag that we find in a dumpster behind a bar, right? It's not enough, okay, right? You need us too for that, right? There's got to be
right,
some. There's
for
got to be
sure.
right.
So I think the obligation,
What are the obligations or responsibilities that you owe us? You owe us. Give up, pay up, ladies. What have you got? Show your cards. What do you have for
so I
us?
think the obligation of women is to not just bear children, because yes, any woman can bear a child, for the most part.
Yeah,
But I think that the obligation,
artificial wombs are coming.
right?
AI girlfriends are here.
Hold on.
What have you got
But
for us,
beyond
ladies?
that, but beyond that, that is just a very small part of a woman's role when it comes to, say, the societal, the family unit, because women nurturing children and raising them in, I mean, because let's be real, children need both parents, but it is, the mother is the primary caregiver in terms of caring for that child. It's
That is
true.
bogus, bogus, bogus. That's the
Where
last
who
thing I
does a
want.
child who does
No,
a child
no.
spend the most time with?
No, no. If you aren't, here's the problem, Camellia, is that you're saying this in the context of a relationship right here. I'm talking
Sure.
about you're changing the terms. On one side of the debate, we're talking about a man has some kind of moral responsibility to intervene to protect some woman that is not going to bear his child on the streets. You're trying to say, oh well, Daniel Penny is probably the outlier here, but in the video that I played, that woman specifically said that she's glad that nobody intervened because it's not worth losing your life. Glad that you didn't fight back. It's not worth losing your life over a cell phone. Okay, fine, right? So in that sense, she's saying, don't help us, right? That's why I have that opinion on this. But
Not
what women
taking it that way, but okay.
what is the responsibility that women who are complete strangers owe to me as a man, as a complete stranger? I know you don't like this. This is an awkward and uncomfortable question because I think that what you need to say, Camellia, right now is you need to come over to my side. You need to admit that there's nothing that women owe men nothing. And then therefore the inverse should also be true. We don't owe you jack squat either. If you're not our friend or our family member, you are a stranger, then you better nut up or shut up. You better learn to carry either mace, pepper spray, right? Or a knife or a gun, because that's what equality really means, doesn't it? Camellia. Isn't that what that really truly means?
So I will tell you that yes, when you're when you're talking about not in the context of a relationship, like I'm not sure if there's some societal expectation of women toward men other than, I mean, maybe historically women have been expected to serve men, in terms of, whether it's, food, drink, I don't know, whatever, but, to do things for men in their capacity, because women being seen as like,
So
service
if we
oriented.
protect you, if we offer you our protection, complete stranger, you'll serve us?
I mean, like we better talk about we better define what that means, but yeah,
Mighty
I'm okay
Mega
with that. That is
Mighty Megatron, the Rumble chat says, I take out the trash, fix the car, kill the vermin, clean the gutters, build the skyscraper, shoot the perp. What do you do again?
okay, but you know what? A lot of those things in the context of a relationship, right?
No.
Lots of those things are
Shoot
in
the
the
perp.
context of a
No.
relationship.
Building the skyscrapers has nothing to do with the relationship.
So I think that if you're talking like
What do you
historically in
do?
terms of men's and women's roles, you would find far more women in caregiver roles. So they're the nurses, they're the caregivers, they're taking care of the elderly people. Women, like if we're talking about roles in society, women are the
You get paid for
caregivers in
that. You get
society.
paid for that, right? Nobody gets paid when they step in to defend a woman from a violent perpetrator on the street who's a stranger. right? You're talking about like doing the jobs that you're expected to do because you signed up for them and you're either getting paid or you're talking about your family. I'm talking about in the context of complete strangers. You're placing a set of obligations and responsibilities on men that you don't know, that you have no attachment to whatsoever, and there is no reciprocation expected on the other side. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, you see this, right?
I do see it. And I do think that people respond that way because we have an imbalance in our culture right now in general.
That's all I'm
And
saying.
I think that people are looking for that balance. I do think in the case of that particular video, it's just like a lot of other things where I don't know if the reaction would be. I think the assumption is that he is stronger and bigger than her, that maybe he could have helped her. If it was another woman sitting there, maybe the perception would be that she could not have done anything to help because she's a woman, she's smaller and weaker. But I think, as individuals, um, I think the idea is that we need to care more about our fellow human beings. That said, I also don't expect individuals, whether they are men or women, to put themselves in harm's way when they have a family to provide and care for, because I firmly believe your family comes first. And I think this is where it extends out. If we're talking about our communities and our country and foreign policy, that's the way I view that as well. My child comes first. I'm not going to go and risk my own death for your child, because my primary responsibility is to care for my own child. And I can't do that if I'm not around to care for them.
That's
So I
right.
think everybody has to make that call. And just like what that girl was talking about, where, in the heat of the moment, like they're just, sometimes you don't know like what you're going to do, which way you're going to go. Everybody responds differently. But I do think that as a general rule, as a guiding principle, that's where I am on it.
Yeah, for sure. In the context of a relationship, we're talking about strangers. You remember there was that incident that happened several months ago in Brooklyn, where that lefty guy got stabbed on the street, and his girlfriend went out and did like a GoFundMe the next day, so her friends, communist friends, could take off work, right? And it was like, so even in the context of a relationship, it wasn't appreciated that he literally died for her, got stabbed to death and died for her. And so it's like, even in the context of a relationship, it's like there isn't even an obligation or of respect for a man that you're. I mean, like, we're talking about like the modern dating world, not as things used to be, but as they are right now. Andy Opperman just made a huge donation over there on the Rumble Rant. Says, I feel a moral obligation to help anyone that is weaker than me, that is being victimized in front of me. He says, roll that beautiful bonus content, brother. We are definitely going to do that. So you'll get to skip the commercial break, guys, and watch the bonus content. Thank you for that, unlocking that, Andy. Um, I think you see where I'm going with this, Camellia, right? That like
Sure.
that we're kind of like that we've kept men in their gender roles to some extent, right? And you've talked about like women in their roles, right? But I have a feeling that you are not your view of women and their responsibilities and obligations is not shared by most women. I think that most women are not like the reason why you're on this show and we're friends is because you're unique, you're different, you're not like other people, and so because you're exceptional, you might make the same mistake that my lovely exceptional wife makes, and that is to look at yourself and your own views and try and apply them to the average or to the mean amongst how ordinary people are in society.
Right. Yeah.
You are not an ordinary person in society. Okay, you're a cut above, and you're exceptional. That's why again, you're a guest on the regular guest on the show. So the problem is that if men don't start to withhold the cloak of protection that we have offered to you since the dawn of time, and start to give women what it is that they want, which is men in your sports leagues, which is standing by while you're violently assaulted by homeless men on the streets. If we don't start to remove our cloak of protection from you, you won't realize what you're missing until it's gone. And then when it's gone, that is when people actually start to change. That is when they start to say, maybe it was better when there was a social responsibility for a man to step in and to protect me, right? Maybe it was better. I have a feeling most women probably would want someone to intervene with them. That young girl might be the exception to say she's glad that people don't intervene. But there are a lot of people like that young lady. They don't want to intervene. They would think that guy was racist if he had stepped in. That sickness can only be purged if we go through the painful process of discovery. And that's really what I'm talking about here. Can you kind of see where I'm coming from on this?
I do. I have, and I've been thinking about this actually the last couple of days. But and I'm a little conflicted on this because I do, to a certain extent, agree that there have to be natural consequences, so to speak. I think somebody made a good point the other day. I can't remember who it was now that said that, um, women, like when we saw, I don't know if it was the UFC fight or what it was, but, women have to actually be the ones to step out and say, you know what, we're not participating. This is wrong. Men in our sports is wrong and it's dangerous and we're out. Like the thing
See,
is a lot of women won't want to do that because you do that with the risk that you hurt your career or you hurt your chances, in the sports, for moving on up the ladder in terms of that. But that is the sacrifice that I think is going to be
yes,
necessary for women
yes.
to make, is to take that stand on their own.
Correct, correct. You ladies,
Now,
the sisterhood has rolled them that has rowed themselves, rowed the boat out into the middle of the ocean, and you're floundering and you're starting to drown, and all of the simps and the beta males and the orbiters and the white knights are yelling at me, you know, get there and save them. And I'm saying, hold, hold, just wait, wait until the water has completely entered the boat, and then yes, we will come in and save you. But what are we doing, ladies? We're saving you from ourselves, are we not?
so there is another side to this, though. I do think that rhetoric matters, right? When people talk about, like Ronald Reagan and, oh, Ronald Reagan didn't, he did all these bad things or whatever. But then we talk about the way that Ronald Reagan spoke and how he spoke of freedom and liberty. Those things are really important. And I think that that conversation in our culture and how we speak about things is important. I think it's important in this issue too. So if our entire, even the women who see the issues that have been problematic and have been detrimental to men in our society, I think even those of us who see that, if all we do is talk about the negatives and talk about how bad women are, and that becomes our entire personality, that in itself is toxic and it becomes detrimental to the outcome of what we want to see, because we need to, like at some point, we also need to give people the opportunity to rise to our expectations. We need to give them those expectations to rise to. So if we don't temper the, like, women are terrible and you're bad all the time and blah, blah, blah,
Okay,
blah, blah, blah,
okay.
look
I
at all
I
this,
get it.
you
I
know what
get
I'm
it. The
saying? Like we
rhetoric
need to like
matters. It
balance.
does. Okay, it's true, but this is a talk show, and the rhetoric is supposed to be explosive and exciting and fun, right, Camellia? We're running late. Is there anything you got to plug real quick before we go, or
Sorry, no, we'll continue this another day. But
okay?
anyway,
I'm
thank
sure
you
we will.
everyone and have a great day.
Thanks, Camellia. See you later. Have a good one. Give Camellia a round of applause, guys.